Hello, Art Bridge participants. It's an honor that we have a guest today. Her name is Bambi Bowden. She is a native of Arkansas and has served local nonprofit organizations over the past several years, including but not limited to families who've experienced domestic violence and elders who need support in their area. Through her volunteer and career efforts, she has been diligent to put forth her best efforts to educate and empower those in need. With a passion to provide both tools and skills, Bambi strives to strengthen those in her community with the knowledge necessary to improve their lives. Welcome, Bambi.
Thank you, Laura. It's a real honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, great. All right, Bambi. So can you start out by just telling us some things about you that interest you in helping people who've experienced traumatic events?
Well, I am a 23-year survivor of domestic abuse in a marriage. My two sons were raised in that environment also. So being able to get away from that situation and also see the impact that it had on my sons just created a great desire and drive in me to empower others to know that there is freedom and there is hope and they don't have to stay that way forever. And then also to factor in the impact that this situation can have on children. And just because the trauma might be happening between the spouses, the children are there, they're living in it, they're hearing it, whether or not they are victimized or not. Now, in my situation, my sons both were victimized by their dad, but even when they're not, just that environment, that unhealthy and toxic environment is something that children have to recover from also. So I am very passionate about helping people to understand that there is healing and healing can come, and you don't have to live that way forever. And there is hope beyond what you've been through. You know, we grow through what we go through. We really do. We become empowered and we learn things and we get better. And yes, when terrible things happen, it's an injustice and it's a sad thing, but that doesn't mean that's the end of the story. That may be the beginning of the story. That may be where who you are starts to come to light. So I've been there and I've done that, and I've tried to help other people and educate them to overcome.
Well, thank you. That's amazing. And thank you for sharing your personal lived experience, because studies show lived experience, expertise, for lack of a better term, makes a difference in training people about traumatic events. So when you shared your life story, you mentioned that your two children had experienced what we know as adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
Are we seeing a higher number of adverse experience scores than we have in the past? And what early interventions will adults take that will lessen the long-term effects?
You know, in my experience, I've done a lot of community service with the homeless shelter here, with domestic violence, with a food bank, in several different areas. And it does seem to me like statistics are rising for adverse childhood experiences. I don't know, you know, we have a lot of poverty in our area. I know that that contributes. I feel that lack of education is also part of it, in that, you know, raising awareness, just like we're doing right now. Let's raise awareness and educate people so that they have more of a full vision and concept about what they can do to make a difference, because we can.
How many victims of adverse childhood experiences learn to become more resilient from the experiences that you've seen?
I think having a support system, having people to go to, having people that have an expertise, whether they have lived it or they have studied, but having people there to provide tools to educate and empower people. I think that, you know, we're not what we have been through. We are how we have overcome what we have been through. And if we can teach people this on all levels, you know, from childhood up, then we can create a much healthier society. But we have to start, and it's my hope that we can start when they are children, start early so that they're not older and then they find themselves with traumatic experiences that have never been treated. You know, let's start young. Let's give them what they need when they're children. So give them those tools so as they grow, they will become healthy adults and not damaged adults.
Thank you. Those are really good points that I hope all people keep in mind when we work with people who've experienced traumatic events, especially adverse childhood experiences. Do you have someone in mind or an example in mind? And you don't have to share a name so we can protect the privacy of individuals, of someone you have worked with who's had a high ACE score, or you might suspect has a high ACE score, although there's really no looking at a book, judging by the cover, about adverse childhood experiences.
I think the more that you work with people in the community, the easier and faster you can recognize, sometimes pretty specifically, what their points of trauma were. So the more time you spend in dealing with it and the more that you study, the faster you are to pick up on it. And yes, I would say the majority of the people that I have worked with have had pretty high scores.
Yes, we know, and the data shows 67% of the people who have experienced 2 or more adverse childhood experiences. We probably are dealing with pandemic numbers of people who have experienced adverse childhood experiences. So thank you for that, sharing that information. What are some strategies for developing resilience that have worked for you?
Introspection, I believe. I spend a lot of time going within and trying to understand myself. Why did I put myself in a situation? Honestly, what was it about my childhood that contributed to me allowing someone to treat me in the manner that they did? I had to go inward and search my soul and try to understand why I was the way I was. So in order to do that, I had to trace it back to almost my very origin. I think a strong support group is powerful. Were it not, in my particular case, I would not have been able to leave the abuser. Would I not have had the support group that I had? I was actually in another town. We were isolated. I wasn't allowed to have friends, very little limited family contact. So as a part of my escape, if you will, we moved to a location where my family was. And where I had gone to school. So that relocation built a foundation of support for me that I had not had for those 23 years. So during that time, people could start to shine some light into the situation and say, we're here, we've got you. And they did. They would sit with me. Law enforcement would sit in my driveway. My friends would be with me during the day. I wasn't alone a lot because at that particular time, that's what it required. And I don't think if we would not have relocated, I would have ever found a safe way to escape. So the support group was powerful. Introspection, self-introspection, support group, educating myself, learning what rights that I did have. Actually, a doctor was instrumental because my health was starting to deteriorate, and my family doctor explained things in a language that I could understand. Maybe other people had said similar words, but she spoke to my heart. She spoke in a language that I understood. So even healthcare professionals can be instrumental in giving you the support that you need.
Sounds like she's a very kind doctor.
She was an amazing woman.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to make the move, but I'm glad that you did, and so thankful that your support system was in place and there for you when you needed them. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
While you're with us, I would like your lived peer expertise in working with people who've experienced traumatic events and adverse childhood experiences. Do you think, and this is very simplified, do you think it takes work from the people who have experienced events and work on behalf of those helping them to recover from traumatic events?
Mhm. I do. You know, I've often wondered, what is that defining line between the people that recover and the people that don't? The people that are able to lift themselves up out of that, and the people that just remain broken. I don't know that I know the answer. I know support is very important. I know the inner drive to survive, to not give up, to just keep on pushing forward is also a component of it. I believe working with people who have an understanding that can prod you along and give you tools that you need on this healing journey. Healing doesn't happen overnight. So it is a journey and it does take time. And what works for me might not work for you. So having somebody there who can offer different methods, different modalities that fit your need, that fit your personality, that fit who you are, to offer these things to you to help you with your inner healing. Kindness, as you said earlier, kindness is so important. Gentleness, patience, offering an understanding ear and heart. And if you work with these people, I can't imagine knowing that they've experienced trauma. I can't imagine not being gentle. When you step in those shoes or look through the lens of what they have been through, any heart of compassion should be willing to be there with them, to just hold a safe space for them to be who they need to be, and to give them time, because healing is real. I mean, you and I both know that. And are we better for what we've been through? Yeah, I'm hesitant to say, but I'm a much stronger person than I was before. So even the darkest night has a dawn. And I feel anything we can do to be there with people and help to empower them is my personal commission. That's what I feel I am called to do.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, so Bambi, when you've been working with people, have you ever noticed any common signs that someone may be experiencing toxic stress? Are there any common denominators that you've seen?
You know, my grandmother had dementia, and she spent over the last year of her life in my home. And oddly enough, sometimes I think toxic stress can even resemble dementia. Let's just say in a workplace, when somebody is overwhelmed and they can't remember things, or they start losing dates, or they start losing words, you're not going to always go to it's your age or you have a vitamin deficiency. Sometimes it's just you're overstressed. It's a very simple thing, sleep issues. That's something that comes up quickly in toxic stress, not sleeping enough, wanting to sleep too much, mood issues, not being able to self-regulate. Talking about my grandmother, there are even now studies that are starting to indicate that toxic stress can be an early indicator of causing dementia or Alzheimer's. She certainly lived a challenging life. I mean, she was an amazing woman, but she was a worker, a hard worker, and she had many challenges. And as I think about that now, you have to wonder, what can we do to control our stress levels in the earlier years? If that's a preventative, it's a very ugly disease. Anything you can do to prevent that, I think we should try. So when we start to learn these things, it's our responsibility also. We can't just count on people in our lives to notice. If we start to see the signs in ourselves, there have been times that maybe my sons have said, "Mom, you're awfully cranky." Well, you know what? I'm overwhelmed. But part of the responsibility is on me. It's on me to see myself as I experience these struggles to say, okay, what's wrong with me? Why am I this way? What's causing this? Why am I having headaches? We need to look inward. And I think that that's something that people don't talk about enough. When you start feeling like something's not right within you, then something isn't right. You need to go down your checklist and see, do I have financial stress? Do I have stress at work? Do I have stress in my family? Where is this stress coming from? We need to examine that within ourselves, take responsibility for that ourselves. And I think that's something that does need to be talked about more.
No, those are really good points. Good points. And I just want to make sure I'm not creating stress at someone else's life by the same token, right? So it's almost like a two-way street, right?
Yes.
So if someone says, I'm overwhelmed, then they're expressing, hey, they need something. Or if someone is irritable or might be angry, anger is a secondary emotion. And many times people like to say they're an angry victim. Well, they may not be angry. It may be they're not safe or they don't feel safe. And therefore, that's really the emotion is about safety. Or were they shamed? What anger is a secondary emotion. So what's behind that anger might be something people want to start to investigate more.
I think that's a great point. We need to slow down. We need to slow down in life. We need to drop it back and take the time in our relationships. Take the time to hear. Take the time to care. Take the time to understand.
I think you said something that's pivotal, and that is it's about relationships. It's really about relationships, positive, healthy relationships.
It really is. How much trauma really comes from relationships, whether it's through the childhood or as an adult or as a partnership or in a marriage or in a social group or at work. Doesn't it most always come back to relationship? Now, that doesn't negate accidents and things like that, but I mean, as far as the majority of trauma, how healthy are we? How healthy are we willing to be? How much time are we willing to give to look at ourselves and to look at others and to care? It makes a difference. It really does. I know you know.
Wow, that was outstanding, baby.
Laura, I'd like to ask you a question. Why are neurotransmitters important in overcoming stress and trauma?
Well, neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers in our brain, and we have the ability to increase certain neurotransmitters based on certain behaviors, such as endorphins, which are the natural painkiller, can help people to feel better by going and exercising or eating chocolate, but not too much chocolate, right? So endorphins are important, and that's easy for us to be mindful if we're healthy enough and motivated enough to go exercise. So speaking about motivation, dopamine helps motivate people, and we can increase our dopamine by setting goals and working towards reaching those goals. And we want to set our goals where we can reach them initially, because when we reach a goal, it increases the level of dopamine. And dopamine helps us with our memory. Dopamine helps us with numerous body skills and functions, and helps with learning and memory, things that sometimes trauma impacts. So the neurotransmitters, an easy one is oxytocin.
Mhm.
So it's easy if people say, well, I pet a dog, and then there's oxytocin because touch results in oxytocin. So those neurotransmitters are really important to healing from traumatic events or developing resiliency in preparation for traumatic events. And another easy one real quick would be serotonin. So serotonin involves our gut health. 90% of serotonin is located in our stomach. So those four come up with a little letter known as dose. So when I work with people who've experienced adverse childhood experiences, I'll say, did you get your dose today? Did you get a dose? And so we talk about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, because they help rewire the brain. And if we get enough and we get plenty, it helps us heal from trauma.
That is fabulous, fabulous information. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.